This video contains spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and 2. Jinx gets more and more dangerous. Her first attack on Progress Day was fire with bombs. The second one was the rocket that destroyed the council. So what kind of atrocity will the third one be? Oh, color paint? Okay. Did anybody expect this? I sure didn't. And yet this scene makes sense, despite the apparent oddities. Trust me and see it for yourself during my analysis. To understand Jinx's intentions here, let's first point out all the oddities about these colorful explosions, starting when Sevika activates them, in episode 3, season 2. Jinx only has the time to shout in disagreement, that's not how it's supposed to go, but it's too late. But if it wasn't supposed to go like this, there must have been another way it was supposed to go, but didn't. So the explosions were a part of some kind of plan that was not executed as intended by Jinx. The explosions are caused by the gas from the Undercity, the Grey, flowing strongly through the air conducts until it vents out in several spots in Piltover. In Zaun, we always see the Grey as a greyish-greenish gas, but the gas explosions in Piltover have many different colors. In fact, it's not evident that it's the Grey, since it looks very different. The explosions in Piltover are strong enough to push people to the ground and break a few monuments. However, even if it might be possible, we don't see people openly injured, and in the aftermath, enforcers seem to investigate more about the color stains left on the streets rather than on injuries suffered by people. During her discourse at the council, Ambessa attracts the attention on a child who is wearing a respiratory mask and has one sore eye. It's the same child who, earlier, found himself in the middle of a gas vent. So we can assume that this is the type of damage Jinx's colorful gas explosions caused. And during the explosions, we see Mel very scared and horrified when she sees the front of her house splashed with paint, as if it was something terrible. Now, let's break down the information we have and make sense of all of this. We have said that Sevika is the one who activates the explosions, disobeying to Jinx's original plan. We can assume, therefore, that Jinx's plan was more complex than this, and maybe involved more elements beyond these explosions. However, Sevika saw that her and Jinx were losing the fight against Caitlyn and Vi, and she decided to do something about it, even if it was not in the plan. The most handy solution she saw, probably, was activating these explosions, even if she was not able to follow through with the rest of the plan. This was an emergency decision, a quick tool to change their current disadvantaged situation and create a diversion. And it worked! The explosion opens a breach into the air conducts, which generates a very strong current. The winds separate Sevika, Jinx, and Isha from Caitlyn and Vi. So, Sevika's improvised decision is effective at protecting her team against their enemies. These strong currents run through the air conducts, and in a few spots we see some devices, likely positioned strategically by Jinx, that release a color into the grey, as it blows past them to finally vent out in several spots in Piltover. These vents are quite violent. We see the three enforcers coming back from Zaun violently being pushed away from the vent. And we see other people wiped off their feet, collapsing into the gas, and a spherical statue detaching from its pedestal. But as said, there seems not to be casualties. Otherwise, Ambessa would have highlighted them too as a reason more to take revenge against Zaun, instead of only indicating an alive and frankly not so heavily nor, I suppose, permanently affected child, probably one of the weakest and therefore most affected victims of the attack. Did Jinx want all this to happen? Since Sevika only has to activate some kind of switch to let all those big explosions happen, it means that Jinx prepared carefully a chain of reaction to cause precisely this result. So I think that the explosions went according to Jinx's plan, even if other unknown parts of the plan were missing. Therefore, we can analyze these explosions as willingly and successfully arranged by Jinx, and try to understand what her goal was with that. So we have to answer two questions. Why did Jinx bring the grey to Piltover? And why did she make it colorful? The grey is the gas that Zaunites are constantly breathing, produced by the factories which enrich Piltover. Air ventilation conducts have been built by Piltover to make the air in Zaun breathable, but it is not completely clean. When the enforcers from Piltover go to missions in Zaun, they always wear masks, to avoid breathing for a few hours the air Zaunites breathe during their whole life. Moreover, recently Caitlyn has been hacking the air cleaning system in order to spread the grey in some parts of the city and help her and her team hunt Jinx down. I have seen many people argue that Caitlyn was well in her right to use this chemical weapon to clear the streets from alleged criminals, and that she was able to use it with precision, only affecting her designated targets, and that anyway nobody was killed by it. I disagree. We see the scene where Smitch and his goons arrive at Margot's headquarters and find it overflowing with grey. Yes, overflowing. The gas is not staying in the targeted building, it's spreading around into the streets. Even exposed to a low concentration, people start coughing and struggling to breathe. When one of Smitch's henchmen wears a mask and steps into the foggy building, on his way he found several of Margot's goons unconscious, surrounded by grey, without any protection. We know that the grey causes deterioration of body parts and organs, so the exposition at a great concentration for a prolonged time is a health hazard. Moreover, I think that there is a risk of suffocation. If breathing becomes difficult at a low concentration already, staying unconscious for several minutes in a highly concentrated grey probably hinders even more and eventually stops the breathing, causing suffocation. Caitlyn has been doing this to Zaunites for some time. Piltover allows her to do it directly if we assume that Caitlyn communicates the progress of her mission to the Agreeing Council, as Salo seems to suggest in episode 3 when he hints at waiting for news about Caitlyn, or indirectly by according the complete control of Zaun's air conducts to the Kiraman and just letting them do whatever they like with it. So Jinx explosions bring that same chemical weapon to Piltover to give them a very short and light taste of what Zaunites have suffered for weeks, probably. She brings to Piltover the grey, the typical air of Zaun, so she brings to Piltover a bit of Zaun's life. The colors also contribute to bringing Zaun to Piltover, but in a slightly different way. Colors are typical of Jinx, they are like her signature. Despite being hunted by Piltover's best shot and heir of one of the most powerful families, Jinx is not only able to elude her chase, but she is even able to manifest her presence in Piltover, the supposedly protected fort of her hunters. This makes evident their inability to keep Jinx out and actually assure the protection they promise to their gullible citizens. Moreover, she manifests her chaotic presence while defying Piltover's obsession for order. We see Mel's reaction when her building is stained with paint. I love Mel, but here she really comes off as a snobby hypocrite. Like, oh no, somebody tossed some paint on my super luxurious house. I feel so in danger. It's just paint. At that moment, Mel couldn't even see the citizens being pushed by the violent vents. She's only terrified by the colors on her house. We get a similar impression later when we see enforcers investigating in the streets about the colors left everywhere. Jinx's attack did not make major damage to buildings, except for that one statue moved of a few meters, nor people, except light injuries. But her colors were enough to disrupt Piltover order and pretense of control. This happens because Piltover is obsessed with order. I have highlighted in several other videos how enforcers are at every corner in Piltover, assuring the public order. Also, the council always worries about the need for the citizens to feel safe. They ensure that rules are respected and that order is maintained. In Season 1, Episode 1, Grayson says that the people of Piltover deserve to feel safe. Shula, in Episode 1 of Season 2, argues that they must do something because people are scared after Jinx's attack. But likely the population suffered no damage since, as I discussed in another video, even the council, the primary target of Jinx's attack, is not completely destroyed. And a bit later, during the memorial, Mel judges important to reassure the citizens that I assure you, the rule of law prevails in Piltover. So, order and control are considered very important in Piltover. This is why Jinx is Piltover's nemesis. She embodies chaos. And that is also why some color stains appearing unexpectedly and without any legal permission feel so scary. They elude the control of Piltover. They show that there are some things coming from Zaun that Piltover is not able to control, and this disrupts their illusion of absolute order. While people in Piltover are scared, some workers and children from the other side of the river, in Zaun or in a poorer neighborhood of Piltover, see from afar this sudden colorful spectacle, and they seem to enjoy it, especially the children, even if they don't know exactly what is going on. So Jinx brings the air typical of Zaun, with the colors typical of her, at the heart of Piltover. She gives Piltover a little taste of the condition of life in Zaun, while disrupting Piltover's obsession with order and rules, revealing its bluff. Piltover is a place where neither Jinx nor Zaunites in general are welcome. However, Jinx is able to make their presence tangible there, thanks to gas and colors. This is one way that activist art can have an impact, introducing into some restricted places elements evoking the presence of people unwelcomed there. Not only this, but by imposing these symbols of the Zaunite presence in Piltover, Jinx is forcing the citizens to remember the existence of Zaunites and consider their life condition, strongly dependent on Piltover's exploitative choices. The grey is what Zaunites have in their lungs all the time because of the factories producing Piltover's wealth. The unexpected colors symbolize any behavior or expression that the Council disapproves and is therefore suppressed to maintain the illusion of order and control. Piltover tries to make Zaunites invisible by keeping them on the other side of the river, in the Undercity, buried in fissures where they don't bother a Piltovian gaze contemplating the infinity of the horizon. Piltovians are dissuaded to go to Zaun by the dangers they are told about it, and that young Caitlyn mentions in episode 2, season 1. The only Piltovian we often see in Zaun are enforcers, sent there to beat the trenchers up or imprison them. The point is, the less they have contacts with Zaun, the less Piltover citizens realize that they are human as them, and that they are linked, and in particular that their actions in Piltover have consequences on Zaun. But if they realize this, they would question their actions and the society allowing them, and the decisions of the council, and the legitimacy of the councilor's power. This is why Jinx's artsy attack is so scary to Piltover. It's out of the norm, it's different, it's challenging, it's disrupting. It reminds Piltover of its own flaws, and these flaws are what scares Piltover. So the colorful and apparently harmless explosions actually had a precise goal to target Piltover's hypocrisy and challenge its deceitful principles. And they struck hard. I hope that now this scene makes sense to you. I talked more about Piltover's arrogance and structures of power in this video. Do you agree with my understanding of Jinx's colorful explosions? Or do you have a different interpretation? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe for more arcane essays, and see you in the next video. Bye!